Oh, yeah. Hello, hello. Right. I shall get started. Right. Kia ora, everyone. I'm Jonathan. I hope you can all see my slides. And I'd love to welcome you to the lovely presentation that I've kind of put together for Privacy Week. So the session that I'm going to be talking about is AI, the good, the bad, and the ugly stuff that we kind of get with AI and AI tools, and how we can kind of use AI tools a little more safely around our privacy and our data that kind of comes in and out, and kind of what usage that we can kind of do. All of this is done as a component of my master's thesis. So everything that I've done, everything that I've kind of worked with in regards to my thesis is within this kind of sphere. So welcome. And so to kick it off, I'm currently a master's student over at Te Pukenga Whitireia Welltech New Zealand. And I've been working with AI technologies throughout my studies, most notably around anti-money laundering and using AI technologies for that, and just working through how we can kind of use it in a way that we can detect money laundering and also fraud, both from a government point of view, but also from a private sector point of view as well, and just how we can kind of get better with it. I am a software engineer over at Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, but none of this work has been done for them, or none of this work is any information in regards to them. This is all my own work. This is all kind of my own stuff. So a little bit of a disclaimer. This is all my own work. None of the information relates to my employer or past employers. All this information's been developed due to my master's study, and some of the information's been given to me by large language models such as ChatGPT, but also Bing Chat as well. And there's some little introductions in there, so we'll be all right. By no means I'm not an expert in this field, but I am learning, and I am trying to do my best to kind of keep my skills up and being able to kind of work in this field long term and do this for a betterment of New Zealand, for example. So, introduction pieces. I'm going to cover what is privacy in regards to data privacy and AI data, and how we can kind of use it in an operational point of view. What is AI? So AI definition and the types of the AI that we can kind of use, as well as use cases for it. How the information is kept private for information privacy, communication privacy, or personal information, and just what we can kind of do with that, and what sort of applications we can kind of use for within AI, but also with our data. So chatbots or generative AI, HR tools, and financial systems. So a little introduction statement. AI privacy is the freedom to keep your secrets from the nosy robots and to make sure they don't spill the beans to anyone else. Data privacy is the power to decide who gets to see your selfies, your memes, and your cat videos, and who has to pay for them. It was a little inspired by Bing Chat and ChatGPT, giving it the question of how do I do a fun introduction statement for this? So, data privacy. Data privacy is thinking of transparency, how we can kind of be transparent around what the data is being collected, what data is being collected, why it's being needed, and what it's being used for, and what happens with it when it's end of life, essentially, and how it's being treated in regards to the environment that we're going through, and what it's being treated for future usages. Thinking of transparency, it's like a superhero power for data protection, to make sure our customers know how the data is being used and what's going on in the background, and as well as how the data is the key to kind of saving the day. And it's almost like a precious treasure that we've got, or taonga, that deserves the respect and care for what's being used, as well as what's being kind of going forward. Data security and usage is around how we protect our data, how it's being stored, where it's going, where it's coming from, and how it's being handled. So keeping along with some of these themes, data security is like a fortress. So it's only as strong as the walls that we put up around it, to keep any of the nefarious intruders away, with the state-of-the-art, with as much state-of-the-art encryption as we can, and just making sure that everything's impenetrable enough that it's not going to break. Like how we've had data breaches in the past, with the most notable one being the Latitude Financials data breach. That's where this kind of comes in. And data usage is like the puzzle that we kind of put together on a rainy Wellington day, and we kind of put together on the table just to kind of keep us all in the to keep us a little more entertained. Data collection, so how the data has been collected, why, and who the collectors are. It's essentially like a scavenger hunt for our information. So we want to make sure that our customers and our people, in regards to the organization that we are in, know exactly what their data is and where to find it, and who's collecting it for what purposes. And we need to think of this as a secret mission to collecting intel on people, and we need to be careful and precise how we collect that information and how do we ensure that it's private and secure. Anonymization of the data, or personally identifiable information. So dates of birth, names, addresses, IRD numbers, bank accounts, all of this is personal information that we need to kind of keep anonymized and keep away from the kind of robots, as it were, and keep away from the AIs. It's essentially like a invisibility cloak for personal information. We need to anonymize the data sources and protect the PII as much as possible, so that we can protect our customers' information and protect their identities. And we need to think of it as a kind of superhero disguise for personal information. So we're wanting to make sure that our customers can use our services without fear of their data being compromised. So for example, with Latitude Financials again, how a lot of customers' data got stolen, like their driver's licenses and passports. That's personal information that should have been more highly encrypted and anonymized, or just plain deleted once it serves its purpose. But again, that was one of the risks that they had. So AI data privacy. So data privacy in regards to AIs is discrimination. So data discrimination and personal information, and just making sure that the information that we're populating the AI training models aren't having our personal discrimination put in, or that it's as universal and as wide-reaching as possible, so that it's being used in a more usable format. So discrimination is like a villain that's wanting to sneak into the data and wreak havoc on it. We want to make sure that any of our we want to make sure that we're aware of the risks, as well as any potential models or discrimination doesn't leak into the system. Purposes of this is, what's the purpose of the data that's being used, and what's it being connected to are the two biggest questions. So the purpose of this is like a compass for our data, so guiding us on the journey and to make sure that our AIs are building on it, on what we need, and building on the journey that is our systems. And we want to make sure that all that data is in the right place at the right time, being used for the right purpose, and just not collecting it for the sake of it. And just thinking that it's the key that unlocks the potential of the AI by understanding what the purpose of the data and the models are, and we can use that to make a positive impact on the world. So, for example, with my thesis and my master's study, making a positive impact on financial entities and our people to build on protection of the different people that we've got that we're serving as people, employees and teams. Inaccuracies, so protecting inaccuracies from what information is being captured. So making sure that there's no glitch in the matrices or matrix, and we're wanting to make sure that we're aware of any potential data inaccuracies and how to take steps to avoid them and address them if there is any inaccuracies. So if there's any inaccuracies around the likes of personal information, or where the data is being used, or what, and that sort of stuff, then we need to be able to voice that to our customers and our people, just to make sure that they are aware of the processes and the information. To this as well, we need to be accountable for how the information is being used. So accountability comes into the ethical use of the data, and how we can kind of protect our information from being unbiased and accountable to our users. And it's a team effort. So we all have the responsibility to ensure that the AI is fair, and making sure that it's a positive impact on society rather than a negative, and being used in an unbiased and generalist way that is ethical. So yeah. So for data storage, data storage is how it's being collected and where is it being shared, if it's being shared, where and why, as well as where it's being stored, and different collection points. So if it's being stored in New Zealand, where's it being stored in New Zealand? Is it being stored in Auckland or Wellington, for example? If the data is not being stored in New Zealand, where's it being stored? Is it being stored in Australia, for example? So it's just around why it's being, what the collection point is. As well as kind of storage locations, we've also got the security and the retention. So under New Zealand law, we've got our data retention laws. So we have to abide by what our privacy team say, but also what the general retention policies are of particular pieces of information. So for IRD information, I believe it's at least a 7-year window where IRD has to keep your financial information, and banks have to listen to that as well. But there's also underlying privacy data retention as well. And just ensuring that our data security platforms are kept secure and up to date, rather than sitting on the background and just not doing anything. User control. So controlling the data requests that come into the organizations, and how we can kind of ensure that our users have control over their own data, and how they can kind of manage what's being used and where it's being used. And just ensuring that all of their data can be requested to be deleted in a timely fashion, and nothing is kept in backups. One of the other points that I'm going to cover on this is data sovereignty as well. Data sovereignty is massive because it is a way of us protecting our data on a local level, but also on a national level and an international level. So for example, with Māori data sovereignty, it's about protecting our taonga, that is our people's information and what it is connected to. Allowing it for principles of control so that we can control where our information is, what information is being stored, and who the information is being presented to, and what our rights are to our data, because it is technically our data, regardless of who has usage of it. So next one is, what is AI? So AI has been thrown around a lot over the last few years. So to kind of define it, there's 4 key areas that I've kind of sat in, and that's reactive machines, so task specific or feedback centric or personal recommendation bot AI algorithms. So for example, with the task specific ones, you've got the likes of Google Translate for translating different languages from your native language to a different language. So for example, English to French or English to Te Reo Māori, that's a task-specific bot algorithm, as well as the likes of image tagging in social media for the likes of Instagram or Facebook. So if it sees a face or it sees a familiar outlook, it's going to offer specific tagging suggestions that you don't have to listen to, but it is what it's being used for. So feedback-centric AI is if you're giving feedback to a specific service like YouTube or Netflix or Neon, and it's asking you, did you like this show or did you not like this show? What? And that sort of stuff. It's asking you for that feedback, so it can then go into a personal recommender, and then it will give you more content that fits with that kind of area. So if you're liking specific videos on YouTube or super liking specific video shows on Netflix, then it's going to keep showing you similar shows and movies that fit within that category of what you like and what you see. So self-awareness, and so there's also self-aware AI. These are coming in the next decade, maybe 2, but they are coming. It may take a little bit longer than a decade, or a little bit longer than 2 decades, but they are AIs that are coming. And for example, if you look at AIs in sci-fi movies, for example, like the movie I, Robot, which starred Will Smith, that's one machine that then gains sentience over its counterparts, but it also wanted to do better for the population. And it started to question its own existence. And if you look at shows like Rick and Morty, they've got the little bot that rolls around on the table for serving butter. At one point, it questioned its existence and its purpose of its own life. It's a way to kind of explain it is, it's like a toddler continually asking you questions. Why do I do this? Why do I need to do that? Why? And what does it benefit me? Artificial general intelligence is where this is kind of going, and it's a next step on our artificial intelligence journey, and to kind of be a little bit more aware and build on the next step, and allowing machines to be more aware of themselves and be at that human level of AI, of self-awareness, basically. So ethics and privacy is more around the fairness and the unbiasedness of our machines. So ensuring that any ethical management all ethical management is created within our AI technologies. So creating a code of conduct to ensure that our AI acts in the best interests of humanity, essentially, and protecting our people and protecting our organizations as best we can. Ensuring that there's privacy first built into these algorithms, so that any information that goes into all these algorithms is kept private and is kept as unbiased and as transparent as possible. And making sure that there's no black box technologies being built. So AIs that we don't know what information's gone into them, but we don't know what information's actually coming out, or how it's thinking of how best to present the information. We've also got the likes of our AI assistants. So the likes of Google Assistant or Apple Siri, or for better one, Microsoft Cortana on the Windows PCs, or Amazon Alexa. All of these are basic AIs that are task specific to allowing us to manage our lives and manage our information and manage our devices a lot easier. So with Google Assistant, Apple Siri, or Cortana, or Alexa, they're all common AIs, and they're all from the big 4 tech companies that are out today. With Google, Apple's, and Amazon's kind of bots, allowing us to control our smart home and smart life and make our lives smarter, not harder. And then allowing us to control these from our phones for the likes of Google Assistant and Apple Siri. Alexa, less so. But you've also got Samsung Bixby as well, that are helpful for doing on-device tasks, so setting timers or setting reminders, or opening up the camera, or calling people, or texting people. And it allows you to kind of control your own device, with your voice, but also it has a bit of a data collection issue where it does store snippets of your voice on device though. So there is that. But one of the most recent introductions to Apple Siri is that they're wanting to capture snippets of your voice and then transmit it back to the Apple servers. And then every time you do a text to another person with an iPhone, and they do text to speech, it's going to play it out in your voice. So that's where we have the issues with deepfakes, because a lot of those voices that are being used are synthesized based on a sentence or two around what that person's saying. And it can be used as a recording to then say, well, you said this around, oh, let's go and start a war, for example, or let's go and do this, or let's go and do that. But you, as the individual, know for a fact you didn't say that. And that's just an issue that is now coming along. And one of my favorite kind of assistants, even though that a lot of people found them annoying, was Clippy. So Clippy is one of the most classic examples of a virtual assistant. And yes, I am old enough to know who Clippy is. For people that probably think that I'm not. Clippy was quirky and occasionally popping up when it wasn't needed, and occasionally with helpful suggestions, but generally pretty good. Sad to see that it is no longer being used, and it is no longer being widely known in general day-to-day anymore. So there's different types of AI as well. So we've got large language models, So the likes of ChatGPT and GPT-4. We've also got Google Bard at the moment, and LaMDA. So LaMDA is the precursor to Google Bard, but Google Bard is the next step on Google's transition into the language models. So ChatGPT is currently the most known and widely used large language model, with a lot of publicity around the data and that it's being used for. But then we've also got the privacy aspect. So large language models are generally trained on public data that is then scraped together from hundreds of thousands of sources. And for example, with New Zealand, we've found that a lot of the Te Reo Māori aspects of ChatGPT and GPT-4 has been kind of scraped from our public sites without our authorization and without our authentication to allow it. And that kind of brings in the data sovereignty and the transparency around what parameters have been used for ChatGPT. What parameters has GPT-4 been used for? And this is also a lot of our translation matrices for translating languages. So again, Te Reo Māori into English and English into French. A lot of these need large amounts of information and a lot of data to be able to build on more and more layers. And we've also got our natural language processing. So this is a sub branch of AI that specifically deals with languages. So it deals with how the information is being translated and or understood by the machine and the end user. And it allows for us to talk to our assistants in different languages. So for example, I've got my Google Home set up both understanding English, but also French, because I can speak to it in French and it will do basic work and it will also feed back in French as well. The next one we've got is generative AI. So that's another big one at the moment. So, and that's where ChatGPT kind of falls in because it is a generative AI, but also DALL-E 2 and the Stable Diffusion protocol applications as well. They're all designed for image generation. But then you've also got the likes of deepfakes that come into this as well, because we can use images and public images as well and use them for creating deepfake videos or deepfake images. So with the Pope wearing a puffer jacket a few weeks ago, that was a deepfake because it was generated by DALL-E 2. We've also got the classification AI. So these come in handy for training data or data quality assurance, or even data safety. So classification AIs can be used in regards to creating a private and safe environment and ensuring that the information that's coming in is being kept in a safe format, and ensuring that any information that we take is then anonymized and made as generic as possible. So if any financial information is coming in, then it's being anonymized and it's being set so that no one knows where that information comes from or where it's going. We've also got the likes of our deep learning models. So this allows us for deeper understanding of our data and allowing us for a larger employment of our information systems. The biggest part of a deep learning model, for an example, is autonomous vehicles. So for example, with our Tesla is the biggest one at the moment for using deep learning models to see what stop signs are around, or pedestrians, or road hazards, and just ensuring that we can kind of detect that in a more timely fashion and avoid accidents if possible. So some use cases for it. So for example, with a lot of my research has been around fraud detection and fraud prevention and analysis for these sorts of things. So anomaly detection is a big thing because we can detect the information that's coming in within our tools to prevent fraud. So if someone comes in and starts using the name Jacinda Ardern, but it's not actually Jacinda that's going for, say, a passport or opening a bank account and that sort of stuff, we can use that prior information that we have on Jacinda to build out these models and go, hey, this might not be the actual person, but we don't know. So we're going to do a little bit more of a deeper check. Customer service AIs are very helpful at the moment because we can build on our customer experience and our brand and build our environment into a bigger step to retain our customers, but also gain deeper insights into what people are buying or how often people are visiting. For example, with my personal life, my father visits Mitre 10 Mega in Porirua multiple times in a week, mostly because he's doing house renovations and house changes. So he's going and visiting Mitre 10 on a weekly basis, or even more often in a week, so 3 to 6 times a week, just because he wants to keep moving his projects forward. For healthcare, so we've got the ability to, because we've got large data sets within healthcare, we can use this information to predict and aid in diagnoses around different patients. So if there's cancer cells or health risks that are coming in, then we can use this information to more accurately diagnose our people and build on our automation of these processes and aid our healthcare professionals to diagnose these cancers or issues a lot quicker and be able to develop these systems a lot easier for them. And the last one is financial analysis, but there is countless more. So money laundering is a big part of what my master's is about. And for this sort of thing, it's becoming increasingly needed because a lot more people are being able to launder money through legitimate businesses or government entities and all that sort of stuff. So we've also got the ability to, again, go back to anomaly detection and scan through our anomalous data. For example, in New Zealand, we have roughly $3 to $4 billion every year lost to money laundering. And that's just money that we know about. So to kind of quantify that, it's basically how much money we spent last year in the last budget on climate response emergencies. So we spent, the budget that was allocated for that was 3.6 billion New Zealand dollars for the last financial year. That was just for that one budget. Imagine how much money we're actually losing if we actually delve deeper into this sort of thing. And a lot of our financial institutions can use these tools to gain deeper insights into their customers for budget analysis or risk analysis for loans. So if you're wanting to go for a mortgage or a personal loan or something like that, it's a way that we can delve deeper into our systems. So how's the information being kept private? So 4 key areas is authentication. We need to authenticate that our users are who they say they are, and authenticate that they are only accessing their information and being able to only get into our servers when we know that they are who they are. Authorizing them, so authorizing them against their customer information, or some people that are needing to access business information, making sure that they're authorized to. and just making sure that we follow these users from authentication through to authorization, and making sure that everything is secure, everything is meticulously ingrained into each step, that each step of the process is kept 100% secure and allowing us to store every bit of information from the moment it leaves the person's browser to the moment that it hits our servers. So, and everywhere in between. So we need to make sure that that transmission is secure. And we also need to make sure that this information is kept well within our retention windows. So we need to abide by our privacy laws or our deletion windows. So if there's a retention period for a particular piece of information, we need to make sure that that information, as soon as it passes that retention period from the date that it was created to the date that we've set for the retention period, it's deleted. And then we need to make sure that if it's being archived, for what purpose, and then why is it being, and then maintaining that retention period for that archive. And to make sure that we kind of look at it from the point of view of a cleanup crew, and making sure that nothing is left behind that is important, that shouldn't be there. So, and making sure that everything is disposed of properly. Communication privacies, so transmitting the information securely. This can't be stressed enough. We need to ensure that encryption is built into the system at the lowest level, and every bit of information that's transmitted across a network or across the internet is encrypted, and making sure that it's secure and platformed properly. Making sure that we're transparent around our third-party communications, as well as what data is being communicated and who the information is being communicated to. So if we are working for a social media agency and we sell off specific bits of our customers' information, why? Where's it going to? How's it being communicated to our clients? Allowing for proper storage of the information. So ensuring that the sensitive information is being kept private, but also regularly training our users and our employees on how we can use best practice for communicating this information, and training them on our communication practices, so that we do abide by our own privacy policies, and ensuring that our data handling is up to date. Because that, at a basic level, helps prevent data privacy breaches and helps protect our people. Digital communication, so digital third parties and advertising, and just ensuring that our social media privacy is shipshape, so no personal information is getting shared privately across the social media platforms, and all of our digital communications are being kept within our privacy policies. So privacy and personal information. So personal information is, like I alluded to before, around our contact information, our basic contact information. So phone numbers, date of births, addresses, names, who our family are. And for a lot of services, they also provide phone contact syncing services. So they say it's a way of finding people that you may know better. But this is also information that can be used for other purposes as well. Private information, like our financial information or our medical information, ensuring that that's kept private as well. Identifiable personas, so personal contacts, family contacts, business contacts. If you know someone at work, do they know this person that may be marrying into your family, for example, or they may know this business, and just making sure that everything's kept in an integral way, and that we're consenting to the information of the people that are being used for this information. So what can these systems do? So for example, with chatbots, a lot of privacy concerns that we've got are phishing attacks. So a lot of people have probably had phishing emails sent to them. Click on this link, you may win $1,000, for example, or I'm a Nigerian prince and I require this amount of money, or something like that. And it's just a false link that's then going to try and steal your information, or it's a IRD email, IRD phishing email that's sent a link saying you need to authorize that this information gets passed on. Website tracking, so IP addresses, browser types, and your ISP all track you. It's just we need to be aware that these sorts of things can also be used in chatbots or generative AIs. And it just brings us back to the safety of, we need to ensure that none of these are a black box tool. Location tracking, so GPS locations or IP addresses or device type. We need to ensure that the information that's going into these services is being kept private for the likes of, for example, booking flights on Air New Zealand. You chat to Oscar, you ask it a few questions. It's recording your IP address, it's recording your device that you're talking to it from, it's recording your ISPs, your internet service providers name. So for example, Spark, it's recording that. And it's also recording, for analytical purposes, mind you, it's also recording your browser type. So if you're talking to it from Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome or Firefox or Opera, it's recording that and saying, hey, that's cool. And it's not using anything else, hopefully. Conversational data. So again, for the likes of Oscar, if you're asking questions around how do I book flights, how do I change flights, and all that sort of stuff, it's recording that information so that it can make itself better and be able to understand future clients or future questions that it's being asked. And then understanding if it's giving the right answers or if it's giving the right, if it's getting any corrections from you. HR tools. So how we can kind of use these tools is around employee safety. So making sure that we're doing more efficient background checks or personal informations, connections and that sort of stuff. This allows us to kind of ascertain whether there is connections to other organizations in a more timely fashion and ensuring that our people are doing what they say they are. Ensuring our demographics are correct and unbiased. So while the AI tools can be used in HR, it's helpful that we train it on a large enough data set that it's not going to just pick one gender or one cultural background or one particular group of people for leadership roles. So for example, with Amazon a few years ago, they got into trouble because they were using an HR tool to hire new people, but it was only hiring males and basically white males, because that was the data that it was trained on. And it was all that sort of demographic bias that was in there. Cultural bias. So we've got cultural and gender bias. Again, that comes into our demographics. And if people are putting their ages in there, why, if that's becoming a bias for people? And the communication and why we're using the data for our HR tools, or what's being retained within it. So we've also then got financial services, so credit scoring, so loan payment risks and that sort of stuff, financial risks, and analyzing the streamlining of the data that's coming in and the streamlining of applications. So if you're going for a mortgage or going for a personal loan or something like that, it's scoring you based on that information. financial advice, so debt advice or savings and investments. So stock market bots are really, really helpful at the moment because it's analyzing decades and decades of information on the stock market and then doing predictive analysis to see what industries are going to be the biggest things next. Or what areas can be improving, and what's the next up and coming. Anti-money laundering is the next big thing because we can use it for fraud detection or pattern recognition within our data. So one of the descriptions that I used in my thesis to kind of sit within Aotearoa's AML and CFT laws for anti-money laundering and counter finance terrorism laws is, imagine there's a pile of dirty dishes on your sink, but you don't want anyone to see it. So you throw them all in the dishwasher or hand wash them. And you mix them with the clean dishes to make sure that everything's going through and getting clean. And then after washing them all, you put them all away. That's a way of showing that you don't know what dishes were clean and what ones were dirty. So that's exactly how you can kind of look at money laundering, because no one can tell what money was dirty and what money was clean. And then ensuring that there's no biased information, so that there's no socioeconomic data that's making the scores being biased against ethnicity or gender or the social economic standings or past credit scores. So for example, I present as a white male. I'm not a white male. I may be white, but I'm also Māori as well. So, and I'm also in a government position, but I'm also a student. So those sorts of socioeconomic and ethnic ways of looking at our data could be used in a way to bias our information against one service or give us a low credit score based on that. So the final summary that I've kind of got for this is AI tools are really, really helpful, but we also need to be aware of the information that's going in, and how we're kind of managing our information coming in and out of these services and how we kind of work with it. With the likes of anti-money laundering and financial systems, we need to ensure that the information that we're training it on is as broad as it can and as unbiased as possible, and ensure that we're transparent enough for our general customers to understand what the information is and where it's going and who's being used it and how it's being accessed. And one last thought. Just like superheroes protect their secret identities, AI privacy is all about safeguarding the hidden powers of algorithms and models from falling into the wrong hands. And imagine your data is the treasure map and data privacy is the lock that keeps the treasure chest safe. Without that lock, AI algorithms could turn into pirates and plunder our information. Again, that came from Bing and ChatGPT. So these generative AIs are really creative sometimes, but we've got to be smart with how we kind of talk with them. So thank you. I'm doing a master's in software engineering. So yay, over at Te Pūkenga for today. So, and question time. So.
Jonathan, I think you might have some questions in your Q&A section.
Yeah, I see them. So, to the first question. So I'm going to answer these live because these are easier. So for the first question, with my research and study, I've mostly been using public data that's available to us, and just ensuring that all the information that I'm using is public and freely accessible. And the processes that I'm using is a lot of kind of different systems that I've kind of pulled together from wider resources and that sort of stuff across different platforms. And a lot of them are being run within cloud technologies. So Microsoft Azure, for example, and all that sort of stuff. Hopefully that has answered the question. In regards to the data accuracy, I don't believe any of my information is ever accurate unless it's proven to be true. But that's just the way that I generally focus on it. Again, I'm not an expert, but I am trying to be as much as possible. Do I foresee a future where data held by big government agencies such as ACC is widely used within the blockchain technology to help safeguard against AI-driven bots and tools? Yes, I can kind of see that as a next step. I think for a lot of our government agencies, we need to understand how the technology is being used, and we also need to have more skills in regards to those sorts of technologies. So we need more people that understand blockchain and those sorts of technologies, but we also need people that can understand AI technologies as well. So that is hopefully a next step for a lot of our government agencies and our Crown entities in particular as well, especially in New Zealand. We need a lot more of these kind of skills. I mentioned anonymization at the beginning. What method of anonymization do I recommend and who should perform it? There seems to be no government minimum standard of what is sufficient anonymization. So for anonymization, it's really best practice. So for the anonymizing of data, just kind of making sure that no information is being labeled as a particular name or anything like that. And just making sure that any information that's coming through is being pulled apart so that any names or addresses and that sort of stuff are being obfuscated within the system and made sure that they're as generic. So make them all Jane Does or John Doe, for example, and just ensuring that that information is correct. For who should perform it, again, that comes down to what agency is recording that information. So for IRD, if they're using a lot of these systems, they can go and do it themselves, or they can employ a bot to do it. Hopefully they don't, and they hopefully do it on their own until this technology or people in their organization understand it a little bit better. How much should we adopt Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics? That is subjective based on we should adopt some of the basics for it in regards to no harm should befall humans. That's a big one. And this is one of those big things. And a lot of our layman's term, a lot of our Asimov's 3 laws of robotics is we need to make sure that these are being for the betterment of humans and not being detrimental to our society, essentially. And yep, there is a lot of options for why it doesn't work as well. Clippy is making a comeback. Yay! My 12-year-old has installed him. Yay! Clippy is awesome. I grew up with Clippy and I swear by it because it was fun to chat to, especially when I was a young kid and I was first doing a lot of work and I was first playing around with computers. Okay, money lost through laundering, where does it go? That's a very good question. With money laundering, we have no clear indication of where the money's going. And in a lot of cases, it's going offshore to secondary accounts, or it's just being pulled out in cash, and a lot of that information isn't being used or captured A lot of the kind of information that I focused on is around different currencies. So if, say, you deposited $10,000, but only 8,000 of that ended up in your account, where'd that extra 2,000 go? I don't know. And that's where the discrepancies kind of comes in. If we're wanting to use our customer information to delve into financial analysis or fraud, how can we be transparent about it and make sure we are using the data for the purpose we collected it? To ensure that the data is being transparent, you just need to make sure that you're transparent in how you're presenting the information. So if you're turning around at the on your sign up page and saying, hey, we do employ a AI model just to ensure that the information is correct. At the most basic principle, that's pretty transparent to me. I hate people that use massive terms and conditions, because it does get messy, especially when you put in a lot of legal speak and a lot of jargon that the normal person does not understand. For how will you avoid bias in your fraud detection work, for example, avoid what happened with the Dutch tax authority that used it to spot suspected benefits fraud, but it was very flawed. For me, I would try to avoid it by using a larger data set from multiple different backgrounds. So for example, if I had access to the likes of information from Kiwibank, Westpac or BNZ, and then used data, anonymized data from them to train an algorithm to monitor a lot of these sort of tools, then I think we'd kind of be a little bit better off. But this also comes down to the fact that we need more expertise in this field, and we need to be a little more transparent around this sort of stuff. This opens up the issues of privacy enabling technologies and the usage, for instance, data leakage due to IoT or IoT devices due to the fact that cryptographic algorithms are not sufficient. And where does this go once viable quantum cryptography? Now that's a field that I'm not going to get into because that would require me to understand quantum mechanics, and that is one field of expertise that I do not have, but thank you. I'm kind of curious to know a bit more about that one, to be honest. So if you're still on the call, please reach out to me after this, because I would love to pick your brain a bit more around this one. Do I believe enhanced privacy impact assessments are needed if an agency is contemplating using AI? If so, what considerations should be included beyond the? From my perspective, I think a lot of agencies should start adopting more AI technologies, mostly in regards due to being able to best serve our customers and our clients. But also being able to kind of work within the sphere of our influence a lot easier, and just ensure that just being able to kind of work with more of a bespoke model rather than working within using a pre-built model. So being able to build your own model versus being one from Amazon or Microsoft that you're not aware of where the data is or who built it is a lot safer than using one that you've built yourself versus one that others have built is a lot safer than using one that is pre-made. Do I think individuals should be prompted by AI tools for how long their AI data can be kept and used? Yes, this one's an interesting one because this comes down to the company's privacy policy as well as how the system is being used and how it's being implemented. Again, I would love to kind of pick your brain a little bit more around this one. If you can reach out to me after this, that would be great, because I would love to talk to you a bit more around that one and just understand a bit more around what your thoughts are on that. Another question, one from the same person. Do you think people should be able to opt out of smart device usage? Yes, we should. And yes, we should be able to go and live in a cave and not have any technology around us. And that's some things that I try and do, as well as I leave the technology at home and I go on camping trips with the partner. And we go and just go bush for a weekend and just ignore everything for a weekend. And that's something that I highly recommend everyone else doing. And yeah, another question. Is the New Zealand government looking at implementing governance frameworks or guidelines on the adoption of new technologies such as generative AI? Yes, there is conversations with a few of the government agencies. I can't go too much into that one because I'm not doing this from the lens of a government employee. But from my past conversations at work, there is conversations around creating policies or guidelines for not just using AI tools and these sorts of new technologies within the government agencies, but also in general public as well. There is a few international working groups that are developing something, and these are being leveraged from what I understand. So I'm trying to track down a few more of these, and a lot of these are big pieces at the moment. So again, happy to have a conversation after this, and we can have a deeper conversation. Yeah, and that's basically all the questions. A lot of people saying